Hey guys, welcome back to the Bearded Christian Hillbilly channel. I promised I'd do a follow-up on my last video, and so I'm going to keep my word on that for my 5 or 6 dedicated viewers that I actually have that I had on the last video. But it's not about the numbers. It's just about getting the message out. Today we're going to be talking about the demons. And like I said last time, lumping these entities into either angels or demons, is really simplified. It's a lot more complicated than that. And one thing you got to understand is that none of these beings were created evil, because everything was created by God, and God wouldn't create something that was inherently evil, not even Satan. Now, God, of course, probably knew that the rebellions would happen, that certain creations would rebel against him and disobey him. But, like I said, that's the price you pay when you're dealing with free will. So we'll start at the top here. Obviously, number one on the list would be Satan himself, Old Scratch. Satan, surely you know the story of Satan. I mean, Satan started out as what many describe as one of the most beautiful angels and one of God's most loved angels. But pride and disobedience led to his downfall. Now, the word Satan is translated from, I think it's Greek. Don't quote me on that, but could be Hebrew, but I think it's Greek. It is Satan. It's basically spelled the same way, just pronounced a little bit differently. And it simply means accuser or adversary. And that's basically Satan's job description. I mean, Satan is not necessarily behind every bad thing that happens in this world, even though the Bible does say that, Satan does have a lot of influence in this world even now. Satan knows the battle's lost. Satan's read the book all the way through. He knows the ending. And so his primary mission is to bring as many people away from Jesus and God as he can. I mean, that's the only semblance of victory that he has any hope to obtain. Because he can't win. That's already settled. But he figures, he's going to do as much damage as he can on his way down. He's going to go down swinging. Underneath Satan himself, he has, I guess, what a lot of people would call like where God has his divine council. Satan's got kind of like a war room with generals in it. And I'm going to, like last video, I'm going to try to stick with the ones that are strictly mentioned in the Bible. There might be a few here that I'm going to deviate a little bit, and when I do, I'll let you know that, you know, okay, this here isn't strictly in the Bible itself. You got to go to an outside source to get it, but I'll let you know that. First, we have Abaddon. Abaddon appears, I know, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11. And Abaddon is actually described as an angel, a destroying angel. So Abaddon is a fallen angel. Then we have Azazel, who is mentioned in Leviticus 16. You know how they would sacrifice, the two goats. One would go to Yahweh, the other one they would send out in the wilderness, and that was a sacrifice to Azazel. Azazel is basically a demonic spirit of the wilderness. After that, you've got one of the more famous big baddies, I guess, which is either Baal or Baal, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And Baal is mentioned over 90 times, I think, in the Old Testament. Baal is basically the main god for the Canaanites and the Phoenicians. And a version of Baal happens to be the main antagonist in my novel, Pastor. But yeah, that one's probably mentioned more than any other in the Bible. And Baal itself, Baal, it translates as Lord. So now whether that's a proper name or not, we have no way of knowing. Belial is mentioned in 2 Corinthians. That's also listed as one of the princes of hell. And the last one I think that's actually mentioned in the Bible by name is Beelzebub, who's called the Prince of Demons in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So we've already got quite a few high-level players here on the bad guy side. Dr. Heiser he didn't like the word demons either, because he didn't feel, same as me, he didn't feel like they should be lumped all into one category. He used powers of darkness, and I kind of like that better too, because that's more of an all-encompassing term than just saying demons. After that, you got the fallen angels, the third of the angels that fell with Satan when he was cast out of heaven. Depending on your timeline view, and there are different timeline views because of when Satan was cast out of heaven. Depending on your timeline view, the Watchers could have already been fallen angels. The Watchers we talked about last time being the angels that mated with human females and produced the Nephilim, the giants. Personally, my opinion, and it's only an opinion. Personally, my opinion, I don't think they were part of that bunch. I think that they started out either being neutral or partially good, you know. Excuse me. I think they, they had a job to do. Their job was to watch and observe humans on Earth, and temptation just got the better of them. So my personal view is that they did not start out, when they first probably came to Earth, they probably weren't disobedient to God. They probably had every intention of fulfilling their mission, but it all went south. So, and yeah, like I told you last time, a lot of the ones I talked about, well, not a lot, some I talked about last time when we were talking about the good guys, they're going to end up being on this list too because they fell along the way. And you've got the fallen angels, which we just talked about, and the watchers possibly, well, they were definitely fallen after they did what they did, But fallen angels and what we would call a demon, again, in my opinion, but backed by the opinion of quite a few people that are a lot smarter than me, a lot of famous theologians. There's a difference. A fallen angel is still an angel. And a demon is a totally different thing. We've talked before about demons being the spirits of the dead Nephilim. Now, the Nephilim being the offspring between the Watchers and the human women. Now, to me, this makes sense. Because angels in the Bible frequently appear in human form. They're not some kind of hologram. They're not this wispy spirit looking thing. They look like people, The men, in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the men were chasing the two angels, wanting to do bad things to them. Now, you wouldn't be chasing something that looked like a ghost or something you could see through. You would be chasing something that was physically there. And by any measure, when you read the Bible and study it, there's many times that angels are described as being men. They look like us, or they can look like us. I don't know, in the spiritual realm where they actually exist most of the time. I guess they're spiritual beings, but they can manifest here in our world and be mistaken for men. The Bible says, be careful, when you interact with people, for you might be entertaining an angel without knowing it. So if you're talking to somebody, if you stop and help somebody, or if you say a mean word to somebody, and it could be an angel, and we couldn't tell the difference, so it brings us back to the demon part of it. Now, why would an entity such as an angel, who has the ability to manifest physically on earth and have their own body, want to possess somebody else's body. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But it does make sense when you consider demons being the disembodied spirits of the dead Nephilim. Because they once had bodies. You know, they were half angel, they were half man, half human. They lived their lives in basically a mortal body. They ate, they drank, they did everything we did. And now they're disembodied spirits. And what they want more than anything is to be back inside of a body, to experience the pleasures of the flesh that only mortals, only humans can experience. So that's why it makes a lot more sense to me that when we say demon, and you want to really narrow it down to what a demon actually is, that's what a demon is. There's one more group that's, before I get to that, I want to get to one more that's not actually in the Bible. But his name is Asmodeus. And he is in the book of Tobit, which is not a canonical text in the Bible. It's kind of alongside with the book of Enoch, First Enoch, book of Jubilees, you know. These, in other words, there are other ancient Jewish texts that the writers in the New Testament were completely familiar with. You know, Jude mentions Enoch, not once but twice. So if you believe that the Bible is the Holy Word of God, inspired, and they're talking about this book, then, you know, I don't see why people would raise so much of a fuss about actually looking at these texts. Because if you put yourself in the place of an ancient Israelite, an ancient Jewish person, this is what they would have been reading. You know, you had the 400 years of silence basically between the last book of the Old Testament and the first book of the New Testament. Now, that doesn't mean they were sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They were still writing stuff. But it was just ultimately decided that these works, even though they were important and all ancient people knew them and had read them and were familiar with them, they couldn't pinpoint an exact author to make them feel comfortable enough to actually include it in the Bible. And that's basically the reason. So if somebody comes up to you and says, don't be reading that book of Enoch, you know, that's witchcraft, that's bad stuff, you know. No, it's not. The book of Enoch is First Enoch, so I'm talking about that. There are actually 3 books of Enoch. The second and third are generally disregarded. But First Enoch actually expands upon the Genesis 3 narrative about the fallen angels and goes into great detail, even names quite a few of the Watchers. Goes into detail about how they made the pact on the top of Mount Hermon, you know, that if one of us goes down, we're all going down, you know. So, I mean, I'd recommend it. Don't do it if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable. But I'd recommend giving it a look. Okay, so the last one I want to talk about, and I'm not going to say very much about because I'm going to make another video. I plan to that's more about this final type of dark power, and these are the elemental spirits. Now, I'm pretty sure it's only Paul that talks about the elemental spirits, and he does so several times. And there is some debate about what he's talking about when he says the elemental spirits. But there's quite a bit of ground you can stand on to say that these are kind of minor demonic entities, which some of the ancient pagans worshipped, which were not just idols. It's not like they just went out and looked at a rock and said, oh, we're going to worship that rock right there, you know. It's not that. But, of course, the four elements, as the ancient people considered them, were fire, water, earth, and air. And that's where you get kind of a lot of the nature spirit stuff that you find in Native American lore. You get a lot of the fairy stuff, which is why I'm going to wait and talk about this later, because the fairy stuff kind of ties into my earlier books, the Finn McCoy books. So, we'll wait and we'll talk about them later. If you want to go ahead and look them up, you know, you can. But that's about all I got. I'm sitting over here in this hot building. It has been a scorcher here, excuse me, here in Tennessee today. Heat index was over 100. This building's insulated, and it has I've got a wood burning stove behind me, but I don't have any air conditioning or fans over here. So I'm about to sweat myself to death. If I fall out of frame, you know, before I get to turn the video camera off, you know what happened to me. Heat exhaustion. So I'm about ready to call this and done. But the overall thing just between the two videos is just a basic kind of understanding about what we're dealing with out there. And when you're talking about spiritual warfare. And are some of these big baddies going to be gunning after you personally? Probably not, you know. Unless you've done something really bad, like try to summon them or make a pact with them or something. Usually what we have to worry about is your basic demon type entity. But the rest are there. The principalities that fell when they decided they wanted to be worshipped instead of directing the worship towards God, you know. The powers, the thrones. These all started out as heavenly beings, you know. They just disobeyed. They decided to disobey God. And that cooked their goose. So hopefully y'all got just a basic understanding. So if I do make some videos later that go into a little more detail, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you don't watch this video, I'm going to direct you back to this video, and you'll have to watch it again anyway, because I don't like repeating myself over and over and over. Anyway, y'all have a good night. It's night time here in Tennessee, about ready to go to bed. Bless each and every one of you, and we'll talk to you later.